Okay, so we've talked about since we've talked about the idea of what drawing is and the kinds of tools that can be used for drawing. Next, we're going to look at the specific tools that we're going to be using for our exercise today. And so, the first thing that one needs is newsprint. They typically come in pads that range in sizes from 8 inches by 10 inches all the way up to 24 by 36 inches. This particular pad is 18 inches by 24 inches. And something like this can be purchased at an art supply store. I think I paid $10 for this one. The thing to keep in mind about purchasing newsprint or surface to work on, particularly when you're practicing and learning to draw, is the larger the overall size is of the surface that you're working on, the better. And the reason that's true is because it gives one the opportunity to make large gestures. And it's in making large gestures and working in a more physical way that will develop the hand-eye coordination that's so important for drawing. So in addition to the newsprint pad that we'll be working with, we're also going to be working with Conte crayons, which look like this. And Conte crayons have been around for some time. I was told when I first started working with Conte that this is what Leonardo used, and Leonardo da Vinci. And that's true to some extent, but not exactly. The Conte crayon was invented sometime in the mid 1700s by a Frenchman whose name was actually Conte. And so Conte crayons are pieces of compressed clay and wax and charcoal. So it creates a really rich medium. It's a very controlled medium, but it's something that a lot of people, when they're first learning to use it, have great difficulty with because it's very different from the graphite pencils that we are used to using for drawings and sketching. So we have our newsprint, we have our Conte crayon, and last but certainly not least, erasers. And it's good to have two different kinds of erasers. One is the kneaded eraser. This eraser has a really soft texture. It's very pliable. And actually, when you knead the eraser, hence the name kneaded eraser, like this, it becomes more malleable and it warms up the eraser. So the way the eraser actually reacts to the surface that you are erasing on changes depending on how much you knead the eraser. So you can also use it for daubing pieces of medium, like for instance you can daub slightly on the Conte and it will remove sort of a blot section of Conte, or you can actually do really fine erasure marks. But when it comes to clean mark making with an eraser, you need a white eraser like this. And white erasers like this are wonderful because they have these great edges. This is a new eraser, so obviously all the edges are going to be really clean. Over time, as you use it, the eraser can get worn down and the edges can become more rounded. The rounded edges can be used for lots of interesting things as well, lots of interesting effects with your drawings. But if you need to get a clean edge for really clean lines or for erasing around very specific parts of a drawing, then all you have to do is take a razor blade or something sharp and just slice off an edge, and then all of a sudden you have that clean edge again. You have those really clean lines that you can use. Okay, so now that we know what the tools are that we'll be using, we'll go ahead and we'll get started with our exercise. Okay, so here we have our newsprint. And so what we're going to do is play a game. And the game is called Space Invaders. And this is what it's going to look like. So you'll begin with a fresh page of newsprint. I want you to take your Conte crayon and I want you to just break it in half. And so this is going to give you two different kinds of edges. You can see here that these two sides are not symmetrical. So they have different properties. This is one of the most important things in learning to work with Conte, is learning to find the edge that will accomplish the goal that you're trying to accomplish. So when it comes to drawing, the most important thing is to have rich, interesting lines. So if you are a person who tends to be really heavy in your mark making, really heavy and slow, it comes out in the lines. You can see how a fast, clean, light line reads very differently from a heavy, slower line. Sometimes you need these heavy, slow lines to communicate a particular element of one of your drawings. But the important thing is to learn the sensitivity so that you can do the heavy lines when you need them, and you can do the light lines when you need them. And the best way to develop that sensitivity is by playing a game called Space Invaders. And here's how it works. On your sheet of newsprint, I want you to create multiple groupings of 5 dots, like this. So you'll just use the edge of your Conte crayon, and you'll create little groupings of dots. You can do as many as you'd like, but starting off, you probably don't want it to get too crowded, because it will likely be just distracting if you have too many of these things going on. So once you have your groupings of 5 dots, you'll begin by finding a clean edge on your Conte, and you can try any of the edges. You can actually sort of experiment and see which ones give you the kind of line quality that you want. So I can see here that this edge is giving me a really nice line quality. So I'm going to loosely hold the Conte. I'm not going to hold it like a pencil, but I'm going to hold it using at least 3 of my fingers like this. And I'm going to use my entire arm when I'm making lines. So the idea here is that you will draw a line from one dot to the next dot in one fluid motion and as quickly as possible. And what you want is accuracy. So you don't want your line to go way over here or way over here. You want the line to go from the center of the first dot to the center of the next dot that you're aiming for. So it'll be something like this. So you can see that this line goes pretty cleanly from here right into the center of this second dot. And so focusing in that way will help you develop the hand-eye coordination that you're going to need. But also doing it quickly helps develop muscle memory, so that your mark making is cleaner and more exciting and more dynamic. Now you can see this isn't a simple process. You can see here that this first line that I produced here didn't quite even make it over to the second dot. So like with anything, this is going to require practice. And sometimes you might be better than at other times, but the more you do it, the better you will become. So this is the first step in developing your drawing skills. So I'd just like for you to take some time on your newsprint and do lots of practice with Space Invaders. And that's it. That's all you have to do. So I would suggest that you produce 5 full pages of these groupings of 5 dots and the corresponding lines, and that will start the development of our foundation in drawing with Conte. Thanks very much.